It is very concise. It's a really fascinating book, like in a lot of aspects. I think it's really well written for its brevity and its like succinctness. It's like it's so well written. Every sentence is like a cliffhanger or an ominous foreboding. It's really good. Or it's one of those things where it's like nothing doesn't move the plot along, you know? All right, fucking Gerda. We gotta stop Gerda. It took me 3 days to find Gerda's weak spot. And during those 3 days, I was sweetness itself with her. I had never liked Gerda. She had a way of spitting when she spoke, even more so when she giggled, which she did almost all of the time. Besides that, she would never let Ursula Marie alone. And Ursula Marie was my best friend, and so very special. Not only because she had blue hair and 6 braids, but also because she only ever wore black. Yeah, that spitting giggler made you give up your green wedge shoes. Ursula Marie was my best friend, and so very special, not only because she had blue hair and 6 braids, but also because she only ever wore black. If my mom hadn't kept on sabotaging it all by buying those garish clothes for me, I would have worn only black too. As it was, I had to make do with 1 pair of black pants, 2 black t-shirts with funny slogans in English, and 1 black woolen undershirt that was still too warm to wear yet here at the beginning of September. But now it was all about Gerda. I swapped hair elastics with Gerda, whispered with her about boys, and confided to her that I had warmed a bit to huge Hans, which wasn't true in the slightest. But though you're not supposed to lie, this is what my older brother referred to as force majeure. Majeure. And even though I wasn't quite sure what it meant, it definitely entailed that right now lying was okay. The first 2 days didn't yield much. Gerda didn't seem to be especially fond of anything. Or perhaps she had seen through me. Everyone shut up about Hugh Chons. There were some old paper dolls that her grandmother had given her, but I knew she hadn't played with them since we were in the 5th grade. At one point, she showed me a picture of Tom Cruise, who she was swooning over and kissed every night before going to bed. Then there was a whole stack of romantic novels, with doctors kissing nurses and living happily ever after. I admit I wouldn't have minded borrowing them occasionally, and Gerda would have probably stifled a tear or two if she had been made to hand them over. But it was still just trifles. Nothing that truly mattered. Then on the 3rd day, I found it. It was while we were sitting in Gerda's room, drinking tea and listening to a tape her father had just given her, that I discovered Gerda's weak spot. We'd spent the 2 previous days at Gerda's mother's place, in the room that she had there. It was filled with girls' stuff, all sequins and tinsel. Now we were sitting in the room at her father's place, where she stayed every other week. It wasn't the stereotape deck, or the inflatable plastic armchair, or the idol posters on the walls that made this room different from the one at her mother's place. For she had a stereotape deck and an inflatable plastic armchair and idol posters on the walls there too. No, the thing that made the room at Gerda's father's place special was that in the corner stood a very large cage with a very small hamster inside. I'm so sad because we're back where we were, but we've still lost about 40 to 70 viewers. It's all my own stupidity. It was literally that was such a short, that was 10 minutes. It's not even, it was 8 minutes and 23 seconds. I wasn't even reading the whole time. We were 5 minutes into the chapter. And I lost a third of my viewers because I forgot to plug my laptop in. You tell me that nothing matters, Pierre Anton. Collider, thank you for subscribing. I almost feel like shaking my hips a little bit, trying to get some viewers back. Let's go. Do you like this? Do you want to watch? Okay, I guess I'm just gonna oh my god, it worked! Welcome, 42 new viewers. 42! It just jumped from 100 to 142. What's up, viewers? Good to see ya, dude. I'm reading a book. Welcome. Just like that, huh? What are you doing? Watching the thumbnails until they change? You're like, oh, she's sitting down right now reading a book. Ew. And then you wait for the thumbnail to be me shoving a vape up my butt, and then you click on the stream. I'm just kidding. I'm just joshing you. Welcome back. I forgot to plug my laptop in and it died. I killed my battery. Chapter 6 continued. The hamster. The hamster's name was Oscar Little. No relation to Stuart Little. And Oscar Little was what I declared the next day that Gerda had to give up to the heap of meaning. Gerda wept and said she was going to snitch about me and Huge Hans. I howled laughing when I told her it was just something I'd made up, on account of force majeure. That made Gerda cry even more, and say I was the cruelest of anyone she knew. And when she had cried for 2 hours and was still inconsolable, I started having second thoughts and thinking maybe she was right. But then I saw my green wedge sandals on top of the heap and wouldn't budge. Ursula Marie and I walked Gerda home to get Oscar Little right away. We weren't giving her any chance to get out of it. Gerda's father lived in one of the new row houses. They were gray-brown and built in brick. At least the outer layer was, around the concrete. And all the rooms were fitted with large, easy-to-open windows. The row houses lay at the other end of Terring, where until recently there had been meadows full of gray-brown sheep. The fact that the house was at the opposite end of Terring made the walk long and exhausting. But the main thing was the large windows. Gerda's father was home, and Oscar Little had to be smuggled out. Ursula Marie went with Gerda into her room, while I stood outside ready to receive. Oscar Little was handed through the window, and I stuffed him inside an old rusty cage we had dug out for the purpose. Gerda herself just stood sniveling in the corner of the room and refused to lend a hand. "Shut up, Gerda," I snapped eventually, unable to take any more of her whining. "Or there's a dead hamster going on the heap." It didn't make Gerda stop sniveling, but it did quiet her down enough to make things tolerable again. And for her to leave the house without her father catching on. Oscar Little was mottled white and brown, and actually fairly cute with his trembling whiskers. And I was happy not to have to do away with him. The cage, on the other hand, was heavy and unwieldy. The road to the sawmill, unendingly long. We should have borrowed Holy Carl's trailer. We didn't. We hadn't. So we took turns carrying. Gerda, too. There was no reason for her to not take her fair share of the aching shoulders, which Ursula Marie and I were getting. It took an age to reach the field and the sawmill, and Oscar Little squeaked the entire way, as if I was really going to kill him. But eventually we got there and could put the cage with Oscar Little down in the half-light inside the door. We let Gerda line the cage with some old sawdust, and after she had given Oscar Little an extra portion of hamster food and a bowl of fresh water, I climbed up the stepladder and placed him and the cage on top of the heap. I climbed down again, dragged the ladder away, and stood to admire the heap, with the cage, like a star, slightly crooked on top. Then I noticed how quiet it was in the mill. Quiet, quieter, all quiet. It was so quiet I suddenly couldn't help but notice how big and empty the place was. How many cracks and crevices there were in the concrete floor that could just be picked out beneath the dirt of the sawdust. How thick the cobwebs were that were clung to every beam and joist. How many holes there were in the roof. And how few window panes were still intact. I surveyed the surroundings, from one end of the mill to the other, up and down, down and up, then finally turned my gaze towards my classmates. They were still staring silently at the cage. It was as though Oscar Little had added something to the heap of meaning that neither my green wedge sandals, nor Sebastian's fishing rod, nor Richard's soccer ball had been able to. I was pretty pleased with myself for coming up with the idea. So it stung that the others seemed less than enthusiastic. It was Otto who came to my rescue. "Now there's something that's got meaning," he exclaimed, looking away from Oscar Little and towards me. "Pierre Anton's never going to top that," Huge Hans added. "Pierre Anton's never going to top that," Huge Hans added. And no one seemed to be protesting. I had to bite my tongue not to blush from pride. It was getting late, and most of us had to be getting off home for supper. We took a final look, a final admiring look at our bulging heap. Then Sophie turned off the lights and closed the door behind us. Jan Johann put the padlock on, and we hurried away in all directions. It was Gerda's turn. Okay, how long is chapter 7? Not very long. I will read chapter 7. I do have to pee again. I'm sorry. I've drank about 2.5 beers. No. Yes. 2.5 beers in the last 3 hours, and it's got to go somewhere. I'm so sorry. Anonymous, thank you for $50. If you were to play a character in a movie version of this, who would it be and why? Is it Ursula Marie? Let me think. I'll tell you when I come back from the restroom. I'm back. Just kidding. Definitely done reading after this part, though. I'm tired. I'm tired of reading. Chapter 7. Oh. Oh yeah, I totally did not think about what character I was gonna play while I was in the bathroom. just completely left my mind. I guess I would like to play Agnes. I've always put myself in the place of the main character, so I think I could really nail Agnes as like a 13-year-old. Yeah, I think I look like an Agnes. I always felt like, even without putting yourself in the place of the main character, I always felt like I was an Agnes, you know? She's definitely, you know? Okay. You'd be the hamster? Okay. No, the book doesn't make me tired. It's just reading. Like, I've already read 2 chapters, okay? Leave me alone. I don't know if I would have chosen somebody's hamster to put on the pile, but whatever. I think I could play the role. Where is my chapstick? Not here. Nope. Anyways. Thank you, Alrock. Yeah, I just want to drink and vape and smoke weed. I don't want to read books. That's what I'm doing right now. I can't smoke weed. It's already hard enough to read out loud after a couple beers, so I don't smoke weed when I'm reading streams. And, you know, I'm going to read 3 chapters, and then I just want to smoke weed and dance. If that's okay with you. Why do you read books then? Because I really enjoy them. I just can't read a whole book in one sitting. Nobody's asking me to do that, right? So I read every Monday around the same time that I started today, about 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Chapter 7. It was Gerda's turn. Gerda wasn't particularly inventive, and said only that Macon only said that Macon was to hand over her telescope. We all knew Macon had invested 2 years and all her savings into the telescopes. Macon? That sounds right, actually. We all knew Macon had invested 2 years and all her savings into her telescope, and that she spent every evening when the sky was clear, observing the stars. For she was going to be an astrophysicist. Even so, it was a disappointing choice. Macon herself, though, proved to be more adventurous. I might play Macon. Macon herself, though, proved to be more adventurous. Without needing time to think, she looked directly at Frederick and said, "The Dannebrog. The Dannebrog? The Dannebrog? Someone help me. This one, too. The Dannebrog. The Dannebrog. I'm American. I don't know what this fancy word is. Dannebrog. The donut dog. Help me, Mitchell. How do you say it? Spell it in American. Demogorgon. Danabrog? I believe you, Alrock. The Dana... Is that Dana or Donna? Donnabrog. Dale Dimino. I'm Doug Dimino for the Donnabrog. Danabrog. Danabrog. Danabrog? Danabrog? It sounds how it looks. There's like 8 different ways to pronounce it, how it looks. The Danabrog. The Danebrog. The Donbrog. Donbrog. Okay. It's the Danish flag. The Donbrog. It was like Frederick started to sink. Sorry, it was like, oh my god, dude, this is also why I have to stop reading after this chapter. I just cannot stop fucking it up. It was like Frederick started to shrink. He grew thinner and smaller and more red in the face and began to shake his head vigorously. Frederick had brown hair and brown eyes, and was always dressed in a white shirt and blue pants with creases that the other boys did their best to ruin. And like his parents, who were married and not divorced, and never would be, Frederick believed in Denmark and the royal house, and was forbidden to ever play with Hussein. I don't know what any of this means. I'm so sorry. The Donnabrog, our proud flag, had descended from the skies in 1200 and something, Frederick maintained, in order that the Danish king could prevail over the enemy in Latvia. And prevail over the enemy in Latvia. What the Danish king was doing in Latvia, Frederick was unable to enlighten us with, nor would it have helped him any if he had known. We definitely couldn't have cared less about kings or Latvia, as we hooted, Donnabrog, Dannebrog, Frederick, fetch your Dannebrog. As songs go, it was hardly noteworthy, but we repeated it over and over to our great amusement. What amused us most, though, was probably the horrified expression on Frederick's face. In the front yard of the red bungalow where Frederick lived with his married and undivorced parents stood Taring's tallest flagpole. From that flagpole, the Dannebrog waved from sunrise to sunset every single Sunday. Whether it was the Queen's birthday or Frederick's, or just a regular holiday, in Frederick's family, running up the flag was the man's duty and privilege. And since Frederick had recently celebrated his 14th birthday, he had proudly accepted taking on both the duty and the privilege from his father. It went without saying that Frederick had no intention of giving up the flag. But we were unyielding and pitiless. And the following day, the Dannebrog took its place on the heap of meaning. We sang the national anthem and stood to attention while Frederick fastened the red and white emblem to the iron rod Jan Johann had found at the back of the mill, which was now planted firmly in the middle of the heap. The Dannebrog was a lot bigger up close than waving at the top of its flagpole. I felt slightly uneasy about the whole venture, considering the history and the nation and all. It didn't seem to bother any of the others, though. And when I thought of the meaning, I knew that Maiken had hit home. With the Dannebrog on high, the heap of meaning sure looked a whole lot like something. Something. Lots. Meaning. That Frederick had a wicked streak was an idea that would never have occurred to any of us. Yet he rose significantly in our esteem when he demanded Lady William's diary. Lady William was, how should I put it? Lady William. And Lady William's diary was a very special thing indeed. Bound in dark leather and French pulp, with meticulously inscribed pages inside that looked like they were sandwich paper, but apparently were a whole lot finer. Now Lady William huffed and puffed, and under no circumstances was he willing, and he waved his hands about in a manner we girls later tried to copy as we died laughing. It was to no avail. The diary was given up to the heap of meaning, though without its key, which Frederick had forgotten to claim, thereby falling just as quickly in our esteem as he had risen. Lady William declared in a nasal tone and rather condescendingly that with the addition of his diary to the heap of meaning, it had reached an entirely new plateau. He took particular delight in words that came from French, and that the rest of us didn't know the meaning of. Whatever it meant, it was because of this plateau that he begged Annalie's forgiveness for her now having to give up her certificate of adoption. Annalie was Korean, despite being Danish, and her two sets of parents she had only ever known, and of her two sets of parents, she had only ever known the Danish ones. Annalie never uttered a word and never interfered in anything. She just blinked some and looked down at the ground whenever anybody spoke to her. She wasn't even saying anything now. It was Ursula Marie who protested. That doesn't count, William. A certificate of adoption is like a birth certificate. It's not something you can give away. Well, I'm most sorry, Lady William retorted with an indulgent air. My diary is my life, and if it may be sacrificed to the heap, then so may a certificate of adoption. Was it not our intention that the heap should be meaningful? Not in that sense, Ursula Marie replied, shaking her head so her 6 blue braids flew about in the air. Lady William persisted politely, and we didn't really know how else to object. So we simply stood there, mulling it over. Then, to our astonishment, Anna Lee said a whole lot at once. It doesn't matter, she began. Or rather, it matters a lot, but that's the whole idea, isn't it? Otherwise, the heap of meaning has no meaning at all. And then Pierre Anton will be right about nothing meaning being... Please help me. Okay, Anna Lee said a whole lot all at once. It doesn't matter, she said. Or rather, it matters a lot, but that's the whole idea, isn't it? Otherwise, the heap of meaning has no meaning at all. And then Pierre Anton will be right about nothing meaning anything. Anna Lee was right. The certificate of adoption was added to the top of the heap. And when Anna Lee declared that little Ingrid had to give up her new crutches, nobody objected. Little Ingrid would have to use her old ones. The meaning was gathering momentum, and our enthusiasm was boundless when little Ingrid, quite unperturbed, whispered that Henrik was going to have to bring the snake in formaldehyde. And that's the end of the chapter, and we're done. On page 55, Henrik is going to have to bring the snake in formaldehyde.